Good morning. Welcome to Southeastern 16. I'm your host, Chris Lee, joined by Graham Doty.
About the SEC and the transfer portal. The offseason is well underway. The roster carousel is churning. We got a sidekick with Graham here as he's doing a little Mr. Dad duty. For those of you who are watching online, for those of you who are live with us, thank you for joining us today. Always appreciate your support. Your super chats are appreciated. And as always, remind you to join the membership tier, which you can see in the chat. It tells you how to join. It's only $4 a month. We will have some bonus members-only content in the coming weeks as Graham and I take a little break from the end of the postseason to now to get some rest and to reset. But, yeah, we've got the draft coming in a couple of weeks. We've got the portal closing tomorrow. Graham, we've got all kinds of stuff going on, and we're ready to talk some baseball with pretty much every team in the league so far having been fairly active in the transfer portal.
Yeah, it's been interesting looking at different teams' philosophies. You know, some teams are going heavy in the portal. That's understandable. Like somebody like South Carolina, Georgia, Kentucky. And then you got other teams that haven't really had several additions. You know, teams like LSU, Arkansas, those are some of the teams. They don't really have a lot of additions. So everybody has a different philosophy, but it's certainly been interesting to watch.
What stands out to you so far? And look, we've got a lot of stuff going on. We got a babysitter coming, so I'll give you a second to pass off and collect your thoughts. I don't know. We've done a lot of research. You did some great work on it. I've got a document in front of me that's 2,500 words with players and what they did and where they came from, and that doesn't even include a couple of big additions that landed last night. Anyway, what is standing out to you so far from what you're seeing in the portal?
Like to me, it just feels like Texas just crushed it with their portal additions. They really made a point of emphasis. They wanted to get left-handed arms, especially like bullpen wise. So I don't know if like their team meeting, like coaches get together, you know, they didn't make it out of their regional. So I don't know if in their team meeting they sat down and they were like, look, we got to make this a point of emphasis. So Texas really crushed it arm wise and some of their additions position player wise. You know, like they got Josh Livingston, first baseman from Wichita State, led Wichita State with 15 homers and 48 RBIs. They got an outfielder from Butler. Again, but before we dive into this, if I butcher somebody's last name, I promise it's not on purpose. It's just some of these last names. It's like, oh boy. And this outfielder for Butler is one of those. So Jack Moronek, he was a second-team all-conference selection in the Big East, led Butler in hits, home runs, RBIs, over 30 home runs in his 2 seasons there. So, I mean, we can dive into it in detail here in a minute, but Texas impressed me. Tennessee impressed me with what they did. Like Tennessee is one of these teams where they lost a lot in the portal, but they're also bringing a lot of new people in. As far as like position player wise, Chris, like Texas A&M, to my knowledge, they are the only team that brought in a position player that's going to be a first-round draft pick. They got the shortstop from Maryland. He's playing in the Cape this summer, and he's turning heads in the Cape League. So he's been crushing it this summer. They are the only team that I can see that has a position player that's going to be a high first-round draft pick. And again, he's going to be the shortstop, you know, for them this upcoming season. They didn't really have a lot of additions compared to some of the other teams A&M did, but it just feels like the ones that they did hit on will be a nice impact for them. Chris is Hakopian, second team all conference in the Big Ten twice. Hit almost 400 this past season, 14 home runs, 62 RBIs. So you just kind of think that that's going to translate to the SEC.
Yeah, I know a lot of SEC teams were after him. He had from what I'm told, a pretty large price tag too, which, you know, some teams approach this differently. Some teams are going more for volume and quality additions. Some teams are going for star power. And he was one that I think could have played probably just about anywhere.
Yeah. And that's a good point you made. One thing I noticed just diving into all this, it kind of feels like all these SEC teams are like, okay, you get this guy, we'll get this one. Because when you look at all these guys, their options, it's like either they pick whatever school they went to over 3 other SEC teams, like the top end of the ACC, like North Carolina, Florida State, Clemson. Everybody in the SEC, it feels like we're in on all these guys that are coming into the league this upcoming season.
Yeah, I think you're looking at some teams like that have some interesting stuff going on. Like I think Georgia's added like 16 guys. That's just
That's a lot.
That's kind of how Wes Johnson runs his program at this point. He did it last year, brought in probably at least that many, a lot of arms, a lot of bats, and it felt like their whole lineup was first-year transfers almost, other than maybe Trey Phelps. So, yeah, and I'm very interested to see how that's going to go going forward after next year when I think some of the rules with NIL and yeah, the scholarships and everything. Like, I'm wondering, like, is this going to be the last big year where we see it like this? And next year, is it going to look more traditional? I saw a comment the other day. This applied to football. I think it was from Josh Pate, who said, this is starting to feel more like recruiting used to feel in football. I have a feeling we'll see the same thing in baseball, too. And, of course, it's a different animal with the draft and everything, too. But I'm very interested to see this time next year, as an aside, what that is all going to look like.
Yeah. Obviously, we haven't seen how everybody's going to do it, but I would think most teams in the SEC are going to do the full scholarships, right? Don't you think? Like the 30 up to 34, just because this is a conference and league that really cares about college baseball. And if you don't do that, you're going to be behind the 8 ball.
Yeah, I'm looking through your list right now. Just, again, patterns that are here. I think Georgia and Kentucky have used the transfer portal more than just about anybody. I thought Wes Johnson last year did a tremendous job in getting just a lot of hitters. It wasn't anybody in his haul last year. I don't remember how highly regarded Robbie Burnett was, but they got a lot of these mid-major transfers. You look up and the whole lineup, again, is almost that. Kentucky, Nick Mingione kind of does the same thing. In fact, I would say they probably go more low major than Georgia does. He got some dudes from Northern Kentucky, North Florida, some pitchers that are going to help them. They got Ryan Mullen from LMU, who 2 years ago was a rubber-armed guy, which that's kind of a feature of Nick Mingione baseball is durable relievers. So, again, I'm looking at things that stand out. LSU, only 4 transfers so far. Be interested to see what they get through the draft. Jay Johnson has been really good at getting dudes through the draft lately. So those are some other things that stand out. And Greg wants us to talk about people handling the new roster limit, which you kind of just did.
Yeah, so pretty much everybody – the max, I'm pretty sure the max, it's either 36 or 38, something like that. I don't think you'll see everybody go to the max because, again, you get a certain number of scholarships that you have to balance across all sports. But I do think you're going to see every SEC team, probably even Missouri, going to go with at least 30. So, again, you're looking at 30. That's full ride, too. Like, again, forever in college baseball, it's been 11.7, and you just had to balance it and figure it out. So I think you're going to see the majority of the teams in the league go with 34, which is going to be a huge benefit, plus, like, whatever NIL you get on top of that. So that's going to be a huge factor, not only in the league, but in the country as well, just because the SEC is going to be one of the few conferences that is all in college baseball. Like I would be stunned if you see a lot of group of 4 teams or group of 5 teams be able to do this. You'll see the top end of the ACC, Big 12 do it. Other than that, I just don't think you're going to see a lot of schools and conferences go with 34. So it's a huge benefit.
We've got some of our Tennessee regulars in the chat. What do you think of Tennessee's strange offseason. I mean, Tennessee is always landing some big fish. I know Henry Ford is probably the biggest name the Vols have landed. I'm a little skeptical. They get him through the draft. He's a big-time prospect. I don't know if that's a leverage play or I mean, who knows? Henry Ford may not even know at this point, but that's probably the headliner. They landed Blaine Brown, the freshman slugger from Rice, last week. At the end of last week, who had a big year. You mentioned they landed Landon Mack late last night. So that's a big name for Tennessee. But the Vols lost, I think, 20 arms in the portal. I mean, I say lost. I think that they were probably fine with most of those leaving or being run off, or however you like to put it. Bo Rudy from Kennesaw State has been a kid who committed a few weeks ago, ranked pretty highly by 64 Analytics. But, man, it has been a whirlwind trying to keep up with what's going on with Tennessee, especially on the pitching end.
Yeah, so Tennessee is a fascinating case. Again, I think 64 Analytics does a really good job of the transfer portal. So according to them, Tennessee has 27 players that left from this past season's team. That's the most of anybody in the SEC. Now, a large chunk of that are guys that just never played at all. 12 of those never played in a single game. So they're just going someplace just to get some action. Now, their additions, they went heavy on the arm side. Some of the most intriguing arms that they got, Clay Edmondson, righty from UNC Asheville. He's a sidearm pitcher. He had more strikeouts than innings pitched, and he pitched 82 innings this past season. His ERA was below 2.5. Another interesting arm they got, Brady Frederick from East Tennessee State, SoCon Pitcher of the Year. What's fascinating with him, everything for him, he did it in relief. He was not a starter. 78 innings all in relief, 76 strikeouts, 19 walks. I'll be fascinated to see how Frank uses him moving forward. They go with Garrett Wright, position player-wise, from Bowling Green. He was the Mack Defensive Player of the Year, first-team All-Conference. He was a catcher at Bowling Green, where he set the single-season program record for doubles. So remember, that was a big thing for Tennessee this past season. They gave up 1 million stolen bases, it felt like. Now, a lot of that was Marcus Phillips. So what do? They address it by getting a really, really good defensive catcher. So they're just fascinating to me because they went heavy pitching-wise, and then it just seems like they always nail it with position players. Like they get Henry Ford from Virginia, second-team All-Conference in the ACC. He is draft eligible, so that's something to monitor for them. So Tennessee is really, really intriguing. They get Blaine Brown from Rice, first-team All-Conference selection in the American. He did that as a DH. Can be a two-way player. I kind of think he's going to be a hitter for Tennessee. He only pitched 4 innings this past season. So I kind of think his role is either going to be DH or like first base or something. Remember, like Tennessee, they're losing Andrew Fisher, so they got an opening at first base. Could he fill that? We'll wait and see. But Tennessee is interesting to me. And according to 64 Analytics, they got the number 4 class. And it's just because they brought in so many different options, pitching-wise and position player-wise. So they are one to watch for sure.
Yes, some arms are interesting. Clay Edmondson, righty from Asheville. You've got the note he's a sidearmer, had a 2.20 ERA in 82 innings. I mean, that just screams. Tony Vitello has made a living off that Nate Snead-type pitcher, the rubber-armed reliever who you can go for long stints and then bring him back later in the weekend. Between here, you mentioned Brady Frederick. Between him and Edmondson, those are 2 guys they're going to cover a lot. 78 relief innings, that's almost unheard of. And you mentioned the hitters. They, again, landed Bo Rudy earlier, and then we touched on earlier Landon Mack, who last year at Rutgers, 80 in the 3rd innings, 81 hits, 70 strikeouts, and one of the top arms in the portal, according to 64 Analytics. I think they are waiting, as Sam said, to get a couple of guys through the draft, a couple of big guys, Cruz Schoolcraft, and I think Cam Appenzeller is his name. Those are 2 big-time draft prospects. I mean, a lot of SEC schools are in that boat, seeing if they can get some dudes through the draft. But I think it'll be very interesting to see how Tennessee's roster finishes out between getting those guys through the draft or not getting through the draft, and what happens with Henry Ford.
Yeah, that's a big one for sure. And for Mack, by the way, I think what's important to note for him, he did that as a true freshman. I know the Big Ten, they're not by far the best conference by any means, but to do what he did at a Power Four conference in the Big Ten, it is impressive. To me, I think the most fascinating one, the one I want to watch the most, is not Clay Edmondson, but Mason Estrada. He's an MIT transfer.
Oh, yeah.
I had no idea MIT played baseball. So it's Division III baseball. He had 66 strikeouts in 41 innings, only walked 23. I'm fascinated to see how that translates to the SEC level. So he's going to a place, he's going to get developed, facilities, all that stuff. So I'll be fascinated to see what the offseason does for him as he gears up for SEC play.
Yeah, I was combing through BA's list of 500 best prospects for the draft about a month ago, and that popped up. I was like, MIT, I didn't even know MIT played baseball. And that was long before he transferred to Tennessee, but he was considered he was inside their top 500. So, it's probably a around 10 kind of pick, maybe 12, 13, depending on the organization and the sign. But he is considered a pro prospect, and at a place like MIT, if you're going to get noticed at D3, you're going to have showed someone something somewhere.
Yeah. Congrats to him. Like, you get a degree from MIT, and then you graduate, then you get to go play in the SEC at a big time program like Tennessee. So congrats to him.
Yeah. Feels like you've won life at that point, maybe.
Yeah, exactly.
Somebody mentioned earlier that we hadn't gotten to the number one class in the portal so far. He's right. That's Mississippi State, which has been a little lower on volume than some of these other teams. But, man, they have hit it with those Virginia transfers who, of course, followed Coach Brian O'Connor when he left Virginia to go to Mississippi State. Pretty good recruiting haul so far for the Bulldogs, Graham.
Yeah. So they got as of today, and again, we're recording this on Monday, they got 13 coming in. 5 of those are from Virginia. So I guess the big one is going to be the lefty from Virginia. So he's following Coach O'Connor. Thomas Valanciunas, I guess is how you pronounce his last name. ACC freshman team, big-time recruit coming out of high school. Tennessee Gatorade Player of the Year. Weekend starter for UVA, 64 2/3 innings, had 70 strikeouts. So you got to think he's going to be a big-time factor for Mississippi State. By the way, if State gets Pico back for another season and Thomas, talk about a fantastic duo. Both of those guys are lefty as well. Other Virginia additions, James Nunnally, Joan James. I think what's interesting, I guess the big one is Aiden Teal for Mississippi State, an all-conference selection, started every game in center field at Virginia, got the pedigree. His brother Kyle is already in the big leagues. He plays for the White Sox. An intriguing option for Mississippi State, it's Ryder Woodson, an infielder from North Carolina State. In the beginning and middle portion of the season, he wasn't an everyday starter. He became one late and just was absolutely red hot to close the season at NC State. So if he's an everyday player from day one for the Bulldogs, he's got a chance to put together a big season. He hit 3 home runs in the Auburn Regional and was a major factor for NC State. They get Maddox Webb, right-handed pitcher from the Citadel, first team all-conference selection. He was kind of their closer, had 5 saves, 23 appearances out of the bullpen. They get Jackson Loger, a righty from James Madison. He was a weekend starter for James Madison. The Sun Belt is a really good group of 5 conference. I guess their big one position player-wise is Blake Bevis from Ball State. He's played first base. He's been an outfielder. First team all-conference selection in the MAC. 40 career home runs for him. He is draft eligible, so that's something to watch. The point of emphasis for Mississippi State, they needed a catcher. At one point, they did not have a catcher on the roster. So they signed Kevin Maluski from Seton Hall. He put up big numbers in the Big East, second team all-conference selection, 16 homers, 58 RBIs last season. So you got to think he's going to be the starter from day one for Mississippi State. They get Brendan Sweeney rather from South Carolina, draft eligible right-handed pitcher. So like it feels like they hit on several options, and which is why they got the number 1 class according to 64 Analytics. And again, the other big one, since they only signed the 1 catcher, they were able to convince Jackson Owen, also a catcher. He did enter the portal, and then he came back to Mississippi State. So as of now, it looks like those are the 2 catchers on the roster for Mississippi State up to this point.
Yeah, the catcher position was going to be a big point of emphasis for them because I think for a minute they didn't have a catcher on the roster. I don't know what's coming in the high school class next year, so getting theirs back. And there were 2 Seton Hall kids in the portal. The one that State landed, and the shortstop whose name escapes me. I'm not sure if he's landed anywhere, or I mean, he may not even been in the portal. That might have been speculation. But those are 2 Seton Hall kids that are very highly regarded. So getting a kid that hit 16 home runs last year is a big deal. The pitching staff, you mentioned Sweeney, who's a draft eligible kid. I think you said that. And they also landed Tyler Pitcher kind of quietly, who pitched in some big spots for South Carolina last year.
Yeah, he did. He was certainly a bright spot on the mound for South Carolina this past season. So, by the way, Hunter in the chat says Evan Sierra, there's a good chance that he comes back as well for Mississippi State. So if you get Sierra, if Pico comes back, and then the new additions on the mound, especially you got a starter from James Madison and a starter from Virginia. So pitching wise, it looks like Mississippi State will be in fantastic shape next season.
Yeah. And 100 points up. Ben Davis withdrew from the draft. Hadn't seen that. There's been a few guys that have withdrawn from the draft so far. Out of the high school class, I know LSU's getting a big one through, and we'll run all that one down in a different video later. We'll have some pre-draft coverage. Just haven't gotten there yet. There's a lot, man. There's a lot to follow this time of the year. The portal closing tomorrow will help us get a little bit better handle on it. But yeah, I think State has pulled a terrific class. I didn't know Pico Cone coming back was a thing potentially, but he's also not like a top 2 or 3 round guy, I don't think, is he?
Well, he's certainly talented, and it's definitely going to depend on where he gets drafted, who drafts him, and what the slot is. So, like, if he does come back, he's going to be well taken care of. So, again, not saying that take it to the bank, he's definitely coming back next season, but it's definitely on the table.
Yeah, I mean, State's got a chance for a fantastic roster, depending on how all these things fall in the next few months. Really, I guess the next month or two, to be technical about it. The draft, by the way, is coming up. It starts 2 weeks from yesterday in Atlanta at the same time media days are going on for the SEC. So a lot going on in Atlanta that week. So looking forward to that. All right, give me something of note that we haven't hit yet, a team, a player, because I know there's a lot of really good players and some pretty good recruiting hauls that we haven't even gotten to yet.
One player we haven't touched on that I think is going to be a stud, it's for Texas. It's Carson Tinney, the Notre Dame transfer. So he picked Texas over Florida and Georgia. First team All-American, first team ACC. He was a Buster Posey Award finalist. So his numbers, hit 17 homers, 53 RBIs this past season. But also what stands out to me, Chris, is he threw out 17 base runners. So this is going to be a guy, he's going to step into that starting catcher spot in Austin. And I would be stunned if he's not awesome.
Yeah, Tinney's another kid who was being pursued by pretty much everybody in the league.
Yeah, I mean, Mississippi State went hard after him. They thought they were going to have a really good chance to get him, but he ends up picking Texas. So I think he's going to be a big-time factor. Like Texas, they're losing their catcher to the draft, so that's one to watch. The other one for Texas, they get the lefty from Wake Forest, Hayden Leffew. He had 59 strikeouts in 34 innings. So his fastball sits high 90s, but his go-to pitch is his changeup. So that's somebody I think that's going to stand out big time. I guess a team we haven't touched on yet is Ole Miss. To me, Ole Miss has put together a really good class. 17th overall according to 64 Analytics. Pitching wise, Ole Miss went with big pitchers. Like every single pitcher that they signed was at least 6'3" tall and can pump it in at mid 90s on the low end. So Ole Miss made it a really big point of emphasis pitching wise. They get Grant Richardson from Grand Canyon, best strikeout rate per 9 innings in Grand Canyon history with almost 13. He picked Ole Miss over Texas, LSU, Florida State, pretty big company. Other ones, Marco Cipolla from San Diego State. San Diego State made a coaching change. He hits the portal, ends up at Ole Miss, picked Ole Miss over Kentucky A&M, Arizona, Oregon, and Kansas. He put up really good numbers this past season. Owen Kelly, another pitcher from St. Louis, picked Ole Miss over Texas, Georgia, North Carolina. Eye-popping numbers on the mound for him. The one that intrigues me is Landon Koenig, a righty from North Dakota State. Incredibly raw, Chris. Like that's a North Dakota State program. They made the regionals this past season, but they don't have a lot of facilities, anything like that in North Dakota State. So he's going to a place where he's going to get developed and he'll work with Joel Mangrum. It's like taking a flyer on somebody and just hoping that you hit, because he's high 90s. He's a guy that's going to come out of the bullpen. He had 3 shutout innings against Arkansas in Fayetteville in the regional. So this is a guy, he has starts in his career, but I kind of think he's going to be a bullpen arm. If Ole Miss hits on him, that's somebody that can be a really big time factor. Position player wise, the highlight for Ole Miss is Daniel Priscilla from Illinois State, first team all conference selection. He is draft eligible, so that's one to watch, but he picked Ole Miss over LSU, Tennessee, Mississippi State. Hit 20 home runs this past season. He's got almost 50 home runs in his career. So position player-wise, that's like the crown jewel for the Rebels.
Yeah, I feel like there's a pretty big emphasis in durable relievers, and Ole Miss certainly landed a couple of those. By the way, who's North Dakota State's recruiting coordinator? That dude does some work, because they have put some good players on other teams' rosters. Daniel Dickinson, I think, was with North Dakota State.
No, he was Utah.
Oh, he was Utah Valley. Okay, yeah. But I think that am I dreaming? I feel like they've had a couple of guys that have gone to some other places.
They've lost 3 to SEC teams, all pitchers. Okay. So again, you can kind of like their record wasn't good this past season, but you can see why they made the regional. So also Danny Lackenmayer, however you pronounce his last name, he's going to LSU. So that's a lefty, 38 innings, 9 saves, 58 strikeouts, 18 walks. So like 2 of their top arms this past season are now in the SEC.
All right, let's just run down one team at a time quickly for the ones we haven't covered yet. By the way, we've got an out about 11 o'clock, if not a minute or 2 before. Let's see, Alabama. I guess what stands out to me, they got Sam Christensen from Oklahoma, who was kind of a part-timer. He'll help them at a corner. Logan Davenport, high on base guy with some power and some speed. I think that that's a coaching staff that does a really good job of identifying underappreciated talent. I think Alabama was unranked in the preseason last year. Ended up in the hosting picture till late. I think if they'd been in any other league other than the SEC, would have gotten there. So always kind of keep an eye on the guys that Rob Vaughn and Alabama bring in, because I feel like he's really good at identifying kind of some hidden talent.
I do too. He's got a type, and he recruits too, and then he's able to really make it work there in Tuscaloosa. So you touched on him. I think the highlight for them, position player wise, is going to be Logan Davenport, Northern Kentucky transfer, first team all conference selection. He hit over 400. He hit 423 this past season, 14 homers. I think what stands out to me, he also had 19 stolen bases. So if you kind of think that's going to be able to translate, they got Justin Osterhaus from Purdue, Fort Wayne. He's played all over the place on the infield at Purdue, Fort Wayne. What's he going to be in Tuscaloosa? We'll wait and find out. Second team all conference selection. 25 career home runs, 24 stolen bases. Brennan Holt, another position player from South Alabama. He's kind of bounced everywhere, Chris. He's played at LSU. He played at Oklahoma State, South Alabama. Now he's at Alabama. He had 303 this past season, 13 doubles. I'm fascinated to see what their pitchers do. They brought in a pitcher from Sanford, North Florida, and Caden Humphrey. He was an all-conference selection. He was a bullpen guy. He put up video game-like numbers. And then they get Owen Sama from Winthrop, 79 career innings pitched, 59 career strikeouts. So I feel like they kind of addressed it, all the needs that they had pitching-wise and, new additions position player-wise. So when you look at 64 analytics, they got a top 10 class. They got the number 7 class transfer portal-wise in the country.
I like a lot of what Auburn's done. Drew Whalen from Western Kentucky, Conference USA Pitcher of the Year, 81 innings, 90 strikeouts for a really good team. They landed Jake Marciano, who's a top 30 guy at 64 analytics. Numbers weren't great. 60 2/3 innings pitched, 6.08 ERA, but 71 strikeouts. That was as a true freshman. There's been a lot of great pitchers that have 6 ERAs as a true freshman. So that one, I think, is one to watch. Auburn, I think, is going to have a stacked team next year with a lot of its returnees anyway. Did lose some big pieces, or will, I would presume, with Irish and probably Sam Dutton and some other guys. Cooper McMurray, I think, out of eligibility, and he'll probably get drafted anyway. And then Todd Clay, the AAC Newcomer of the Year, who is actually from Auburn, had a big year. So I think that Auburn, a team in my mind that was poised to do really well next year, depending on how it fills the holes. It feels like Butch Thompson has got Auburn in great position to next year. You're seeing, I know D1 released its 8 for Omaha this morning. Auburn was on several of those staff picks, and I think I would put Auburn there too, probably, depending on what happens in the draft. So
yeah. Well, to me, Auburn's one of these teams, since they hit on the freshmen this past season, like they haven't really grabbed a lot of players from the portal because they don't really need to, because they had so many underclassmen, the majority of them coming back. They signed 6 so far up to this point from the portal. So to me, the fascinating one is Todd Clay, who you touched on. He's from Auburn. He went to Auburn High School. Chris, if we need to look up Auburn High School, they won back-to-back state titles. That team, I think they got at least 5 guys playing Division I baseball from that high school alone. That's incredibly impressive. But Todd Clay was the American Newcomer of the Year this past season, first team all-conference selection, hit almost 400 this past season. The big one, though, is Drew Whalen. So Western Kentucky, he had a monster year, Conference USA Pitcher of the Year. I got to see him in person. They went to the Ole Miss Regional. I got to watch him pitch. The stuff is there. So how does that translate? Fascinated to see what Butch Thompson does with him. So they went heavy lefty pitching wise. They brought in 3 left-handed pitchers from Virginia Tech, Michigan State, Belmont. So that was obviously a point of emphasis for them. So Auburn is a team, I think they're going to be a major factor this upcoming season.
All right, we've still got several teams to go through. We've got to be out of here right at 11 or maybe just a hair before to be safe for another call that Graham and I have. But, before we do, and we'll go rapid fire, we're going to hit every team on the way out here and then maybe leave a couple minutes for questions, depending on how fast we can do that. But reminder, support the podcast. You can do that through memberships. That's at the top. It's $4 a month. It helps the channel out. We will have some members-only bonus content in the off-season that we'll be getting to. We're spending a little bit of time just to catch our breath and get some energy before football season starts. But that's one way you can help the channel. The other way is to help our sponsors. That includes our friends at GameTime SIDEKICKS. They've got a wonderful line of tumblers that I drink from literally every day. I've got one for my morning caffeine. I've got another one for my daily water, and man, these are great. They retain ice like you wouldn't believe. GameTimeSidekicks.com is the website. It's officially licensed stainless steel drinkware. They got every SEC school, over 350 other schools on top of that. It is top of the market quality for construction and ice retention, double wall vacuum insulated, logo printing and decoration done in Knoxville. Tons of designs for every school, including the college vault line, everything from stainless steel sippy cups, tumblers, 40-ounce bottles, and shaker cups. SE16 for the 10% discount to viewers here on our channel. Go to GameTimeSidekicks.com. Get that there. That's all for your entire order. Oh, by the way, LSU fans, you can get your national championship merchandise. You're going to want to have that. And by the way, if your team didn't win the title, but they've got stuff dating back a few years to Tennessee fans, they got tumblers for your national title last year, all kinds of stuff. Go to GameTimeSidekicks.com. Again, SE16 for your 10% discount there. Okay, let's go with next up in alphabetical order, Arkansas. Jackson Wells, the Little Rock ace, who's a name we know in college baseball, and I think Ethan McElvain, a big one from Vanderbilt, the power lefty who's 98-ish. The control is going to be the issue there, but he will bring the heat along with the rest of that bullpen. Man, they've got some flamethrowers. Ethan McElvain will be the latest one to that. And Dylan Grego, probably their biggest position ad, shortstop from Ball State. Mack all-defensive team, hit 14 home runs, stole 15 steals last year, and he's penciled in to be their shortstop, it appears.
Yeah, I think kind of a cool story for Jackson Wells. He's from Rogers, so kind of a homecoming of sorts for him to wrap up his career. He's a super senior, kind of like the Diego Pavia ruling, which is why he's got one more year. I kind of think he's looking at maybe being the Sunday guy for Arkansas. If he's not, I mean, he's going to be the best midweek pitcher in the country, or if they just use him out of the bullpen. But I kind of think he'll be the Sunday guy for Arkansas. You've seen Ethan McElvain. You know what he brings to the table. A guy with a boatload of SEC experience, over 50 innings in his career up to this point. You touched on the shortstop. Dylan Grego, you know, is he going to be the guy that replaces Aloy, the SEC Player of the Year? We'll wait and find out, but he was an all-conference selection. They bring in another SEC arm from Oklahoma, Jackson Kircher. Not a ton of experience for the Sooners, but he's from Arkansas and went to high school in Little Rock. In his limited action, he did impress. 17 strikeouts. He only walked 5. So you got to think Arkansas knows what they're doing pitching-wise, and if they hit on him, that's another feather in the cap for the Hogs.
All right, Florida, not a big list so far, but a couple of relievers. Ricky Reith from Notre Dame, Russell Sandifer from UCF. I presume they're relievers. I know Reith is. Jaden Bastain from Jacksonville, center fielder. I guess he will take over if Kyle Jones goes to the draft, which I think he's draft eligible, even though he didn't play much last year. Stole 36 bases. Kevin O'Sullivan's tried to get faster and did that last year. That's another step there. And Carson Bowen, who's played a ton at TCU behind the plate. Florida lost some catching there. So I think that one, Kevin O'Sullivan, pretty targeted with the guys he filled. I'll be interested to see what he gets through the draft. Georgia, 15 guys. And again, these are a lot of highly accomplished guys in mid and low major schools. I think you hit on some of them earlier. Man, a lot of good players, a lot of old players. But who stands out to you for Wes Johnson and his haul?
Yeah, when you look at Georgia, hold on, let me pull it up. They have brought in the most players from the portal of anybody in the SEC. So 18 total. To tell you how much, that is 3 more than the next closest, which is South Carolina. So you touched on it earlier. This has kind of been the formula for Wes Johnson since he's been there, and it's worked. What stands out to me, they bring it in a DH from Richmond, Jack
Arcamoni.
Yeah, Arcamoni, first team all-conference selection, 22 doubles, 13 homers. One to watch. How is this going to translate, Chris? Juan Cruz from Alabama State played first base, first team all-conference selection, was a SWAC freshman of the year. Just insane numbers in the SWAC. So how's that going to translate to the SEC? We'll wait and find out. He's a career 400 hitter, 25 home runs, 33 doubles. Be fascinated to see how that looks. Another one, they got a two-way player from Seattle, Kenny Ishikawa.
Ishikawa.
Yeah. 70 innings, over 70 Ks, only walked 24, but also hit 23 doubles this past season. You know, will he be able to make the jump? We'll see. They bring in an outfielder from UNLV, Cole Konorski, second team all conference selection, hit almost 400, 15 doubles. So the bottom line is they brought in a lot. It feels like they brought in a boatload of position players more so than arms, and they're just seeing what's going to work and stick. It kind of worked last season. Remember, they brought in Rylan Zaborowski, from the Mack, and that was able to translate. So maybe they're thinking we're going to bring in guys from literally all over the country. And I mean, everybody, it feels like, hit at 350 or above with double-digit home runs. So pitching wise, I'm fascinated to see what Matt Scott looks like, the Stanford transfer. A boatload of experience. I mean, almost 200 innings pitched at Stanford, 38 starts. The thing with him, incredible sophomore season, 103 strikeouts, only walked 36. Stanford went to Omaha when he was a sophomore. Now, this past season as a junior, his numbers dipped down a lot. Why? I don't know. Remember, Stanford, they're now in the ACC, so did that have an impact? But he's going to Wes Johnson. If anybody can figure out a pitcher, I trust Wes Johnson. And once he gets his hands on Matt Scott, is he going to be like the next stud pitcher on the mound for Georgia?
Yeah, it looked like, again, a lot like last year's class, a bunch of guys that hit double-digit home runs somewhere else, low, mid-majors. And by the way, Alabama State, I think that was where the kid who went to A&M ended up playing left field, was a catcher.
Transferred
and he's
out.
transferred again, but I can't think of his name. I'd know it if you said it. But I think that's the second one of the year that Alabama State has lost, is like a player of the year, freshman year. By the way, you mentioned the kid from Seattle, most famous baseball player from the University of Seattle. We'll test your baseball knowledge here.
Well, wasn't this who, when we had Missouri head coach Carrick Jackson, isn't this who he signed when he was an agent, the pitcher that's now in Detroit?
Yep.
The one that signed.
I'd forgotten he told us that. That was one of his clients? Yeah. It's Tarek Scoble.
That was his first client. Yeah.
No way.
Yeah.
Yeah. He was shoving. I was watching the Tigers yesterday. He struck out 8 in a row at one point, and they were talking about how he was a 9th-round pick, but the scouts loved him, and I think one of the scouts in their room sold him to the GM, and boy, that'll be one of the best 9th-round picks in the history of baseball, but that's where he went, and Georgia got one from there too. Okay, Kentucky, I think we hit on Kentucky a little bit earlier, didn't we, or did we not?
Well, I mean, we can touch on them a little bit more, but here's what stands out to me with Kentucky. So they're not going to have the biggest budget compared to everybody else in the SEC. So what Nick Mingione does incredibly well, he finds guys that just fit their system and what they want to do.
Yep.
So like they go about it a little bit differently. Like he finds guys from all over the place, from different levels. Like they got guys from USC Upstate, like Scott Campbell, first team all conference selection. Remember USC Upstate, they made the tournament for the first time ever this past season. He was really good. They bring in a catcher from Elon that was an all-conference selection, Alex Duffy. They bring in a pitcher from Grand Canyon. If you're a Grand Canyon fan, I'm sorry, because it feels like you lost.
Raided.
Yeah, it feels like you lost everybody on your team. Tyler Kearney, utility infielder from Indiana, second team all-conference selection, led the Big Ten in doubles, almost 200 games played in Indiana. You kind of figure that's going to translate to the SEC. They get Jack Bennett from Western Kentucky, righty, second team all-conference selection. To me, the most fascinating pitcher for them is Caden Ekman from Northern Kentucky, second team all-conference selection 2 years ago. This past season, first team all-conference selection. Chris, in 56 innings, he struck out 87. So he dominated in the Horizon League this past season. But to me, they have their identity. They know what they look for, and they just seem to bring in just a lot of guys that fit their system.
Yeah, what they do consistently is they bring in quality arms, maybe not great arms, not elite guys, not all SEC guys, but they bring enough guys to cover 27 innings, although that was an issue for them last year. Once they got into end of game situations, I'm sure that was on Nick Mingione's mind. And then I think the one that Tyler Cerny, that kind of intrigues me. He's been hit by 45 pitches. If that doesn't scream Kentucky baseball, I'm not sure what does. That and stealing bases, getting on base. So that's one to watch. LSU, I think we touched on earlier. Not a lot of additions so far. I think just 4. And by the way, people in the chat are saying Ashton Larson hit the portal earlier. That's interesting. He was kind of maybe a 5th outfielder for the Tigers last year. You mentioned Danny Lockenmeyer. I think we talked about him earlier when we touched on another team, the lefty from North Dakota State. Braden Simpson, highly regarded third baseman from High Point, 47 career home runs there. Seth Darter from Kansas State, infield guy, 13 homers. And they got Ryler Smart from Tennessee, lefty, who never pitched. So, yeah, not a lot of ads for Jay Johnson, but maybe some strategic ones there.
Yeah. So, Chris, I don't know. Like, I'm in Mississippi, so obviously you kind of hear the whispers and everything. The big rumor, I'm not saying this is going to happen, but reporting it, LSU is trying hard to get Ace Reese from Mississippi State.
Yeah.
Like they're going all in. So not saying it's going to happen. That's something to watch. I would be surprised if he hits the portal and leaves Mississippi State. Again, Ace Reese probably closed stronger than anybody else in the SEC this past season. He had the Triple Crown in league play. That's one to watch. Again, the portal closes on July the 1st, which is tomorrow. But if LSU is able to get him, I mean, that you talk about fireworks. That would be incredible.
Does the portal close at midnight tonight or end of the day tomorrow?
I think end of the day tomorrow.
Okay, that's what I thought too. By the way, Greg, this surprised me too. Jared Avincula, I think that's how you pronounce it, to Georgia Tech. I was surprised. There was a lot of SEC teams in on that kid. Second baseman from Cal. Sven points out Virginia lost another guy to Mississippi State. Virginia's been losing a lot of commits. Vanderbilt snagged a couple.
Yeah, State got 5 Virginia transfers. The other one, we haven't touched on Mizzou yet. So Missouri, Tim Jamison isn't coming back. Their best head coach in program history, pitching coach the last couple of years. He's not coming back. So Missouri hired Virginia's pitching coach. Remember, Virginia just hired Chris Pollard from Duke. So Missouri hired the pitching coach. They're the big highlight. It's not a transfer for Missouri, but he's graduating high school early and he was committed to Virginia. So he got out of that and he's following the pitching coach to Missouri. So that's one to watch. So it's been a tough go for Virginia. They're losing, it feels like anybody that you remember, they were preseason number 2 this past season, and any good player that they had, they lost.
Yeah. Let's see. Oklahoma, Caden Brumball. That's a name I know a little bit from Nebraska. Played there a while. Started his career at Oklahoma State. And they got Cam Johnson, the shortstop, Camden Johnson. I guess Cam Johnson, the pitcher, I think he's in the portal too. Could be wrong. Maybe he's not. The one that transferred from LSU last year. That could be confusing if you have 2 Cam Johnsons. But the one they landed this year is shortstop from Wichita State. And Nolan Stevens from Mississippi State, who I think is a pretty talented player but didn't do much this year.
Well, I think he's going to get more action at Oklahoma. In the limited time that he did play at Mississippi State this past season, I thought he was good. He wasn't an everyday player for Mississippi State. So he's signing with Oklahoma, fresh start for him. And if he's able to get action, I think he can be a factor for Oklahoma. He is a two-way player, but he only pitched 2 innings this past season. Offensively, he had 320, 4 home runs at Mississippi State this past season. So Oklahoma is one of these teams. They did not really dive into the portal, but it just seems like they found guys that fit what they want to do. Up to this point, only 4 transfer portal guys.
Yeah, and Skip Johnson's another one who builds his program in a very deliberate way. They go JUCO heavy. He will sign kids that were overlooked, like the Witherspoon brothers. So I don't ever, you look at it and it's like, okay, it's not on paper what they're doing in the portal isn't great, but he's got other ways of building his roster. So that's a guy that you always kind of trust to. Nick Mangione in that same family of making a lot with what they get and making very smart additions to the roster. So
Yeah.
let's see. We have not talked about. We did talk about Ole Miss, South Carolina. We hit briefly. Again, that's a volume class. I don't know. Is there a big time headliner in this one? I know they're ranked highly in 64 analytics, but I think a lot of that maybe is volume. Not that they don't have some good players in there, but I'm not sure that anybody pops like some of these other guys. Alex Philpott's one. I mean, that's a very talented kid that they got, so that's one to watch. But looks like a kind of more of a roster overhaul situation for a team that probably needed. Ant Phillips may be the biggest guy in here, Big South newcomer of the year, who was a Friday night guy.
That's who I was about to touch on. So, yeah, Ant Phillips, first team all-conference in the Big South. Friday night starter for USC Upstate, Big South newcomer of the year. Interesting journey, Chris. Prior to his one season at USC Upstate, he pitched 2 seasons at a small NAIA school in South Carolina. And now 3 years later, he's going to pitch in the SEC. So that's cool to see. To me, they went heavy pitching wise. Other pitcher, if they hit on Bradley Hodges, a lefty from Virginia, that'll be a nice pickup from them. Had Tommy John, missed all of 2024. So this past season, he was on a pitch count for Brian O'Connor and UVA. He didn't pitch until March, so that's why his numbers are a little low, like under 30 innings, but he did have 36 strikeouts, walked 17. If he's healthy and if he's good to go, he could be a factor for South Carolina. Looking at other ones, Ethan Lizama, watched him play in person from Western Kentucky. He's taken advantage of the Diego Pavia ruling. He's a JUCO kid. This past season at Western Kentucky, 336 average, 15 homers, 60 RBIs. So that's an older kid. If that translate, he could be good for them. They're taking a flyer on Reese Moore, a guy that played a lot of games at Iowa, over 100 games, career 300 hitter, 31 career doubles, 14 career home runs. Eric Parker, somebody interesting, an infielder from Georgia. Originally committed to South Carolina out of high school, goes to Georgia, didn't play a lot, 16 career games at Georgia, but this is like he's got tools, Chris. Like he was drafted by the Dodgers coming out of high school in the 15th round. So he's back to the place where he originally committed to. What that looks like moving forward, we'll wait and find out. But yeah, when you dive into it, a lot of guys. And that's not a surprise. If you read the story after the season for South Carolina, like you could tell, like Paul Marinari really wanted to bring in guys, in his second season that he was high on, comfortable with, that he felt really fit his system. So that's why they brought in so many guys, and that's why they have a high-ranked class, the number 5 class transfer portal-wise in the country, according to 64 Analytics. They lost 20 players, and they brought in 15, which is the second most, only behind Georgia.
Yeah, that's a good call there on Parker. Wes Johnson didn't bring him any freshmen a year ago. He was one of them. They just had so many older position guys through the portal. Okay, that he just didn't play, and now he's on another team. We hit on Tennessee. We hit briefly on Texas A&M. One team we've not talked about at all is Vanderbilt. It's not a big class, but, man, I like what they've done. They got Carter Johnstone from Fullerton, and I think they're going to have a really good roster coming into the year. Depends on some fringe guys, whether they get them through the draft or not. Cody Bowker being one of those. I say fringe guys. They're probably top 6-round picks, but, can you come back and improve? I think Bowker's a guy with really good stuff that could really vault himself up draft boards with coming back. That's one to watch for them. And the other one would be Riley Nelson, I just thought was the most underrated player in the league. So between the draft and the guys they added, I think Vanderbilt's kind of been under the radar a little bit, but Carter Johnstone Big West Freshman of the Year. Really terrific third baseman from Fullerton. And they got his brother, Logan Johnson, who's a guy that they'll need to get through the draft, but I think they probably do. But was a really good player at Washington State last year. Hit .337 there. He'll be a starting outfielder. They got Mack Whitcomb, the player of the year in the OVC from Tennessee Tech, a power-hitting catcher who made DH. Max Jensen, a really good infielder from Cornell, who was hurt but has really played well when he's been healthy. And Jacob Faulkner, who's a sidearmer from Princeton. So I think pretty good haul for Tim Corbin, who could get a lot of his team back. And they, I think, have filled holes pretty strategically with these 5 adds so far.
Yeah, I agree. Not a lot of additions, but it just feels like this is a team, when you look up and they hit on a lot of key players for this upcoming season, we can go back to this moment and realize. So only one pitcher up to this point. They brought in tons of position players, but it feels like this is a team that's going to hit on their portal additions.
Yeah. Somebody's asking us to talk about Florida. We did earlier. I think we hit everybody but Missouri. Did we not?
Yeah, everybody but Missouri.
So, and I think they've landed a player that, they've certainly done some work in the coaching department.
Yeah, again, the shakeup for Missouri, new pitching coach. They hired Virginia's pitching coach, and they brought in, I think, under 8 guys up to this point. Missouri has, so it just seems like that's a team like they got nowhere to go but up. So they're certainly shaking it up, and I do think Missouri, they're going to have more resources starting this upcoming season. So
yeah,
I think they're going to win more than 3 games. Did you know that was the most losses of any SEC team since they switched the format to a 30-game SEC season?
Yeah, it had to be. I think Alabama was 5-25 one year. That was the worst besides that.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
So they switched in 1992 to a 30-game format, and that's the worst record since the switch for Missouri. So I just think they're going to be better than what they were this past season.
All right, we're out of time here. We will have some pre-draft coverage. We'll continue to watch the portal, so we'll be back. Yeah, if you called us late, we got your team in here somewhere. It didn't always go in alphabetical order, but we hit them, so go back and watch on a replay. Anyway, we got to move on to the next thing for us on our schedule, so thank you guys for watching and participating in the chat. For Graham Doty, I'm Chris Lee. You've been watching Southeastern 16. God bless you. Have a great day. We'll see you again soon with more baseball content here at the channel.